Welcome to update number 4. We are glad you are with us. We're going to be talking about the evolving workforce, kind of a new homological balance. We have a lot to cover, so I'm excited to be with you. I'm Annette Klosowski. I am co-founder of FPOV with Scott Klosowski, which you probably have connected the two of us. I'm excited about this topic. We have been a firm for 25 years, and this is really one of the most exciting times that we have seen that really bridges strategy and execution, which my side of the house has been around leader development, people development, culture, and then once a strategy is set, are your people ready to execute, and how quickly can you do that? So I'm excited to really share with you today kind of a little bit about what we do. We've mixed in some case studies, and I have John Ikema joining me today, who is a senior consultant with FPOV. He's got a vast amount of experience. So he comes from a CEO role, president and technology executive roles. He has vast experience in leading in platform-based companies and technology service-driven organization. And he's very well positioned, and he has been part of our service offering that we do around this evolving workforce. So John, welcome. Glad to be doing this today with you.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, and thank you for the warm welcome. I'm looking forward to this time together.
Yeah, we've got a lot. So kind of the next 45 minutes or so, we'll leave some time for questions at the end. We're going to be talking about readiness gaps, which I think is really key. So we'll talk a little bit about how we do that, things that we've seen in the market. We're going to talk about the balance of technology and humans and how you can look at that maybe differently. And then the biggest thing is what leaders need to actually be doing. We're going to talk about the questions you should be asking and maybe a different way to look at that. So we did get the answers that you had given us through the survey. Thank you for doing that. That helps us a lot. Today, the people that are here, the vast majority are either in early pilots of evolving your workforce, or you're actively integrating across your organization. And there is about 16% that are actually scaling across the organization. So that's really good. I think when we very first started talking about this topic, those percentages were very low. It was just a topic people were, really having in different executive meetings, but there wasn't a lot of integration or progress. So I'm very excited about that. And like I said, in the questions you asked us, we will definitely be weaving those in. And then at the end, if we have time, we'll answer some more questions for you. So let's jump in. So first of all, just starting with, AI didn't really change your tech stack. It changed your workforce. And so make sure that you're really thinking about, yes, you're using different technology tools. And we've been through this before, so this isn't new. But we really haven't been through something that has changed the workforce or needs to change the workforce like this has. When we really approach an organization that we're working with, we look at this as an entire organizational shift. So this is not about the tools, and it's also not about just this being an IT project that you hand off to IT. We'll talk about that a lot. The key tension is really about the strategy, that you're not building your strategy faster than your people can actually engage and adopt and integrate. That doesn't really get you to the outcomes that you want. So you want to make sure that you define the gap, because that's where the friction lies. And that's addressing, do you have the right leaders in the place? Do you have the right people on your teams? And then do you have the right, obviously, tools that kind of in your role? So, strategy is only as good as the people that execute it. And that's very true when it comes to AI and the evolving workforce. So we're going to start with kind of what matters at the top. So the shift is really about where it starts at the top. So it's not the how to, it's really the what to. So you have to be looking at that. It's not just about announcing AI. I think we've seen that before. Yes, you can announce that you're starting to use AI. Some of your customers may even start experiencing it, but you have to really look at architecting the adoption. So we'll go through some examples of that. But like I always go back to, back in accounting days, I came up when you did accounting on Columnar pads. So I realized that I'm dating myself. But when you went from a Columnar pad to something that was a little bit more digital to maybe something QuickBooks online, and then it's gone on from there. Now you're using AI. We've all done that, but it changes our workflows. It actually changes the way we do business. And so you have to start looking at how you are architecting the adoption across your organization. And it's going to be crossing several different departments at once, more than likely. Deploying tools, you can't really just talk about deploying the tools without talking about enabling the people. I think sometimes we don't set great expectations. We don't set the clear expectations of what we really are looking for, the outcomes that we're trying to, or the behavior we're trying to adopt. And then again, it's the measurable execution. That's where the power is, so that you can really know if you're making the traction and getting to where you are wanting to go. We talk a lot about inspired evolution. So I'm sure everybody on here would agree they have encountered some kind of a fear base around the change. And we've been through, let's be honest, we've been through a lot since COVID, right? So now we're asking people to do, yet again, reinvent ourselves. Our environments are changing. For once, we have in the workplace where younger employees are probably more versed and better because they've grown up and they've lived with the tools than maybe the senior leadership is. And so there's this imbalance. So we could talk about the generations. That's probably another topic. But again, I think you have to really look at the mentality check when you are there. So, kind of go through here and ask yourself where you think you're doing a good job as an organization, or are you kind of doing the AI light strategy, which is kind of on the left side, versus re-architecting and enabling. It's much more of a strategic exercise than it's not. So I know that John and I, we have talked a lot about there's different types of organizations that kind of live there. And some of those are more bureaucratic and territorial, and that creates an issue. And then you have some that are very well structured, and they already have some form of operating system, so it's easier for them to scale. And if you're in neither one of those camps, John, I guess then you have a lot of room. You have a lot of room, I guess, to grow and use the tools, but you also have a lot of issues that you need to be thinking about. So anything to add, John, from you?
Just and I think it flows really well into this next one, this concept of inspired evolution and just being mindful of and intentional of the reality of your current state and your current workforce before you move forward and just dive headfirst into all these AI tools and changing everything, right? Like you need to be very intentional, inspired through that to bring your workforce and your employees along that journey, give them a path that they can kind of envision how to get there. And we'll talk a lot about that as we continue. So.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the main areas in a company that can help you is your learning and development, your training areas. And the problem that we see is they're a little bit antiquated. The way that we have trained employees, the way we've had programs, it's not going to work. They're going to have to be more implemented integrated into the business unit, but they have to understand the business unit outcomes and then train towards that. And then again, the ever-evolving skill sets that we need, and how do we do that? We use AI acceleration teams where we can augment staffs and help them get up and going. You can also create a team like that internally, and we'll talk more about that too. But again, it's a shift at the top, and a lot of times when we go in and we talk about readiness and kind of looking at your organizations, a lot of times what we see is you have issues at the executive team level. Like you're trying to roll this out all the way to the frontline workers, but really you have this issue on the front line all the way up to the executive, but you start at the top. So we want to talk about that.
Yeah, and so it's not always it's important to recognize that it starts at the top, and that's not always inherently just a technology, uh, you know, nuts and bolts technical infrastructure problem. We talked about this a lot this week specifically, the difference between architecture versus orchestration and what does that really mean, and recognizing where to be intentional and strategic with your plans, and where to recognize and how to recognize maybe blind spots as you're evolving your organization to this new world that we're living in. A really good example of this is just when electricity was invented in kind of the late 1800s, and how it evolved into the full-blown industrial revolution. And it took a long time, 40-year period for the real productivity gains to gain their full steam through that time period. And I think it's important to recognize just the inherent nature of like innovation cycles and like the evolution of innovation and how that works, and how it's not just as simple as saying there's this fancy new innovation. We have electricity now, and magically everything is as productive as it can be using that. And the same is true of AI, right? It's not just, hey, we have this new tool or we have this new thing, and now magically everything is fixed, or everything is changed. It takes time and intentionality to, and you have to be mindful that it causes you to completely rethink what it means when we talk about getting work done. When we do work, what are we actually doing? What are the workflows? What are the processes? What is our institutional knowledge that goes into that? What tools do we use? All of those pieces really have to be reevaluated and redesigned to account for this new massive innovation in AI and what that can do and what it means for just getting work done. And the biggest difference, I think, is between electricity or the innovation or that came from the introduction of the internet into the workforce, and then the evolution of software, the journey of software over the last 50 years, is the reduction in time of that innovation cycle is what causes this to be so like anxiety producing, because I feel like even in the last year, some of the changes in innovation, big steps in innovation that have happened within AI, it's like unlocking new doors to this massive room, and you're starting to get a big picture of, okay, now I fully understand the map. I don't fully understand the blueprint and how the work that we're going to be doing is shifting and changing. And so I think it's really important as we continue to move forward to establish some solid frameworks. And some of these frameworks are not new frameworks. You just have to revisit them and calculate in what does that framework look like now that AI is a part of that. So that's a great way to segue into one of the frameworks that we think is really critical is the homology scale, and looking at and thinking through just your homology balance, and how AI redefines that.
Yeah, and I think too you have to remember it's the way work gets done, and it could even be the way you deliver your core services. Like it could be on different planes that you're experiencing this. So I think it's very important. If you've been around FPOV at all, you've heard us talk about homology, and it's not where the goal to be all technology at all. Humans are extremely important, but you just have to decide who owns what. So as technology can really take on and promote more productivity in certain areas, then it frees up the human. What could that person be doing that could add value to your company? And so I think you have to really look at what's a human capability, what's a technology capability, and then decide. I love to use because a lot of you probably travel, I was on trying to change some flights for some consultants, and I got the AI of Delta, which sounds like a great idea until you're actually trying to get something done, and then you get caught in the loop. Again, there should be a way to go, I need a human this time, but access the technology. I tried the link they sent in text, and so you have experienced when you get into the technology loop that doesn't work real well, and then it becomes an impact to how your customers really view you in that experience. So we have some examples, but again, you guys have probably been around enough to know we have a process of how we evaluate different areas of you deciding. You may be in an industry where you want to be an industry leader. You kind of want to be the pioneer, and you may be pushing the front a little bit harder. You may want to be a fast follower, and you may be in an industry that is not moving along as fast as other industries, and that's okay. But what you don't want to be is the travel agency or the Blockbuster. You don't want to be that company that completely missed, using the technology to gain the progress and the outcome. So we have one of the things that we talk about is, and John, I'll let you jump in, but it's really about co-working with AIs. And then there's another level. So I'll let you kind of just talk about a little bit about this is just an example of where you might look at Humology, and that's kind of that RFP capacity.
Yeah, and it's really depending on the complexity of the industries that you're in and the scale at which you're operating. This may, like your starting point on this may be a little bit different, but this is a really good example. Just the any sales life cycle, how it has evolved over the years, and you can probably already think of times in that process where not because of AI, but just new technologies have shifted where you are on the Humology scale, whether you're mostly manual or mostly automated. In sales processes that are compliance heavy and require underwriting and lots of documents and data gathering. That's an area where I think it's really, really powerful to see what AI can do in that process. Whereas, you know, many, many years ago, it would have been a very manual process to even generate new leads, gather all the data necessary about them, call and set appointments. That entire part of the process, step one and step two in this scale, there are tools that can do almost all of that now in an automated way, whether it's an RFP agent or an RFP agent that's connected to your marketing system that's got fully automated drip campaigns and cadences, so that your sales reps are just logging in and seeing where's my step in the process, which I used to have to own all 10 steps. Now I just own the two really warm steps that we want to keep a human in the loop on. And then there's tools that you can plug into that process for underwriting, right? The more compliant heavy or the more risk that is associated with your what you're selling and your sales process, the more you want to have tools to augment that process. Whereas you may have had to collect a census and COIs and other types of documents to underwrite a prospect or can we even, produce a real proposal for them. You can use agents to go collect all of that data and to automate putting it into the system, making underwriting decision framework to get you to instead of saying, hey, this week I can process 100 proposals, saying this week I can process 300, 400, 500 proposals because these agents are doing the heavy lifting in certain parts for me, to where you could go all the way the other end of the spectrum, to where through a combination of AI, automations, and the right tools, the entire process is automated through an agentic framework, to where really the only human in the loop is at the very end of the process to do the final kind of contract review. And you really have to take time to think through where, based on our model, based on our industry and our complexities, can we afford to go all the way to the right end of the spectrum to full T5, or do we need to stay somewhere in the middle and keep a human in the process? So.
Yeah, and I think too we talk a lot about AI taking all the human jobs, and I don't think that's the risk. I think the biggest risk is we failed to design the handoffs. So what are the handoffs from human to AI back to human? And I think that's where we go back to the architecting the way the work is going to get done, that it's a little bit different. And you're making sure that people have the skill sets to work with that. So let's move to kind of a system. This is a system we work within when we help organizations. So there's kind of seven pillars that we kind of go through. And we're trying to cover a lot in a short period of time, but we'll kind of hone in on a few of these. But we've talked about it where, the framework is really trying to figure out what the gap is and then tying the people to the strategy you're trying to execute and making sure that you can execute. We say a lot, go slow to go fast. And so you may have to slow down to get the right people reskilled. You may have to bring in an acceleration team that can really help, that has those skill sets, that teach your team, that will speed it up. But it's also the architecture. It's really looking at what that really looks like, and if people are kind of ready to onboard that. So I know, John, we talk about some of these at a high level. So let's kind of dive into a couple, and I'll let you kind of take the first one, which is the workforce readiness.
Absolutely. Yeah, so the way to think about this first pillar that we're going to dive into is, as you're thinking about your roadmap or kind of the lay of the land, building a blueprint or a map, you can't really like draw navigational lines of like how do we get from point A to point B if you don't know where point A is. And so that's what the workforce readiness tool that we've built is. It is designed to help get a really clear picture of where your organization sits today. Where do you have gaps? Where do you have strengths? Um, what are the low-hanging fruit for use cases? Who's thought about that? Who's ready to take action on those? So that's what the workforce readiness tool is. It's figuring out what is our starting point. And then the second
And
pillar
it's
that we
great.
want, go ahead.
Well, and one thing I'll add to that is it's great when you can map your teams so that you can see behaviors predictable. So if you can map your teams on the comfort level of adopting new technology based a little bit on their behavior, and you map that, you can kind of predict how quickly they're going to be able to absorb the transition. You're going to be able to see the strengths of that team, and then you can plan that as you're trying to roll out your execution. And that's not new to organizations, but it still needs to be applied when you are, this is a change initiative. So you have to apply some of those basics to that. So,
Absolutely. And
so
so the
we were
next
going
one,
to go into humology. Yeah, go ahead, John.
this is the humology that we were just kind of talking about, and it really focuses on redesigning the work, not just the tools, looking at those things together, and being intentional about where does your organization need to land on that humology scale, and really designing that out. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I kind of go back to, we've talked about the Coca-Cola model and like refrigeration. And, when you add more technology, whatever industry you're in, it goes back to, that simply changed the distribution model across an entire industry when refrigeration kind of came on the scenes, a lot like the electricity. What is that for your organization? Is it a market changer for you where you can gain market share? Or is it just something you're optimizing internally that helps you be able to reposition what work gets done where? But again, we say all the time, when technology saves human time, what are you doing with that human time? Where could you reinvest that? Because the answer is not, oh, we're going to cut the people. People are really more important. And so then what are you going to do with the people? Like, what are those skill sets and what are people focused on? Because like in the RFP, they can spend more time visiting with certain prospects. They could spend more time face to face and building relationships, because relationships are really, really important. So then I'll let you take the last one. I know we're just jumping to three of these of the seven, but
Yeah. So on this one, the Workforce AI Sentinel is really about making sure you have a very clear picture. A lot of organizations already have a scorecard, or they already have, KPIs or OKRs, things like that that they're using to track and measure effectiveness towards your goals. And it's that, but focused around your AI effectiveness. So how are you, how effective are you at actually using AI? And, if we build out, prototypes, or if we build out a whole use case and put that into production, is it working in the way that we expected it to? Is there adoption? Is there effectiveness? Is there confidence in the outputs? And tracking that over time so that you can continue to, um, you know, in an iterative process, make those improvements and keep everyone focused in the right direction. And then that'll also give you insight into where you can focus your next, right? Where you've got maybe some spikes that you weren't expecting that are really effective and providing a lot of value. Okay, what can we learn from that? Whereas these others are just kind of on par with what we expected to see.
Yeah, and I think the key is, if this isn't an organizational shift where you are aligning across an organization, you could have one area that's really good because they have the skill sets within that area. And what's going to happen is as they start really moving forward and getting progress, they're going to run up to other departments, other areas of your company, and there's going to be frustration. They're going to work faster than others. They're going to develop more data than they can absorb. It's going to really not be a well choreographed effort. And so you're going to feel that pain. So we really go into a little bit more of this assess and then align. Alignment is really, really key.
Yeah, and I think this is where you know back to the original, or one of the original gaps is when it's not led from the top down, and when leadership is not unified around the bigger picture of vision and priorities, and where are we actually trying to go with this and accomplish this with this. That's where it can implementing and adopting AI can do more harm than good. And that's also a part of, your belief in the flywheel methodology, right? From good to great. And, you know, going slow in the early stages enables speed in future stages. And so getting alignment within leadership, so that there is buy-in and enablement in your employees, is critical. And then that also will ultimately affect how you design your workflows, how you design your homology maps, how you need to change your accountability charts, or your org charts, and literal role definitions and position definitions to incorporate AI. Um, it kind of has a top-down influence effect. So getting that alignment is critical. And then when you go to activate and actually implement, if you're doing these other steps in the right order, um, that's where like you go to activate, you'll have real buy-in from employees, and so you'll see your pilots will be effective. You'll have a proper response to implementing accountability, not a negative response to implementing accountability. And you'll be able to kind of see that shift in your culture to being a very AI centric and AI modeled around AI to like coexist with AI culture. And then, we talked about this already, but the Sentinel, and really getting an understanding and being able to see and measure, like visibly see the impact of all of this change, that it's not just an exercise in saying we did AI, or, it's meaningful and impactful towards what it needs to be. So,
Yeah. All right. To my favorite topic. I
yeah.
like to really talk about the mistakes leaders make, and we make them too. We do this every day, but I think it's moving so fast, and I think you really have to take time to, as a leader, to really ask the hard questions and make sure. The first place I go is, if you as a leader do not understand AI with your own hands, or you haven't seen it with your eyes, and you're not watching how people are building it, what its capabilities are, that's the first mistake. I think you have to understand it. This is not handing it off to IT or people that you think understand it. You understand your business more, and this is about business outcomes. And so I may not understand when I flip a light switch on how the electricity works, but I sure understand all the capacity it provides and what runs off electricity, what the possibilities could be. So you have to have a little bit understanding of it, so it's not just an IT project. That's where we see companies fail the most. They start off really strong. You do not get the adoption, because where does the adoption? The adoption sits with the people. And so when your people start executing, they're not going to adopt something that they don't understand. If you have been the company that have shown tons of change, and this is just yet another change that they're going through, they have a real fatigue. And so if you're underestimating fear, there's a study on, at the top of the organization, the knowledge of your company that makes it work, and the people that have the most knowledge at the top are the least likely maybe to be experienced in AI. You sure don't want them to go, okay, I'm just checking out. That's happening a lot, where executives are saying, I don't have it in me, and so they're checking out. But a lot of it is fear-based. So if you can provide the on-ramp and help people and bring on those AI acceleration teams that help kind of translate, the better it will be. So John, when you look at this list, what's your biggest thing you see when working with clients?
Yeah, so far there seems to be a trend right now that a lot of the mistakes that I'm seeing are that it's just being pushed off to, it's just a technology thing, right? And not recognizing that it is a fundamental shift in every aspect of what it means to get work done and what it means to just be in business in general. And absolutely, IT and that group needs to be at the table, but it should not be solely their responsibility. It needs to be led, kind of a joint leadership from your senior leadership group, buying in, understanding the full scope. Um, the I would say the other thing that I see is people not, or like the third one on the list here, like people not fully understanding or giving credit to the anxiety that this is creating within employees and within the like all the aspects of their workforce, and especially for the people. It sounds counterintuitive, but for the people that are fully utilizing AI, I know this from firsthand experience. It's introducing a new type of fatigue, right? And cognitive load that needs to be um, addressed as a part of this design. You spend all day interacting with an AI agent that then is up 24/7, potentially needing you to give it input and design decisions. That it is a new level of just frontal load. I was talking with Scott about that last week, just the frontal load that it creates on your employees, and what does that mean, and how do we account for that? As well as then lastly is just the potential that this has to create shadow IT issues. Shadow IT is not anything new, but if you have people, especially if you've got developer type of people building stuff, vibe coding new things with an AI tool. Hey, let's just spin up an app for that, right? Because we can now. Well, what does that mean? And recognizing that you're creating infrastructure load that you now have to own and be responsible for. And are you taking full accountability of that, or are you just not worrying about it and because it got the job done quickly, and you're potentially opening yourself up. So all things that can be managed towards, all things that can be accounted for, but you have to be aware of them and do that well.
Yeah, I think Ron and chat, you're right. Sometimes we get it backwards. We want to just train people, get the buy-in, and then you want to communicate the change. And a lot of times we do it backwards instead of kind of defining, the map. Where are we going? What are the outcomes? And then go through redefining the processes and the workflows. And so, yeah, I like that. A lot of the questions we got were about, not knowing what people are focused on, and are we wasting a lot of time? If you are not going through this with a good strategy or roadmap, that is going to happen. You're going to have a lot of people living in silos doing work. And most of you answered that you have people, you're already employing the AIs across your organization. We still work with organizations that say, oh, we don't allow people to use AI. Well, they're using AI. They're just using it on their own laptops, their own machines, because they are making the effective and efficiency changes personally, whether you're adopting them as an organization. So I think you do have to decide on the tool stacks. There are a lot of tools out there. So I think, really taking time to figure out what best sits with you, what best you think for your organization is key. And then, we keep talking about the entire organizational shift around this workforce, because there is exposure, from intentioned employees, just trying to help you innovate and get to a place that they could be putting your company at risk. So you do have to talk about that. We'll talk about the roadmap that we put together, and it does talk a lot about governance and making sure that you're making what John just talked about with the shadow IT, that you can create that innovation, but you're also having the security measures part of that. The other things that were about, how do you know what capacity, what competency, and what skill set you have? That's why we assess the workforce. You may not know. Not everybody has to be, everybody probably needs to be a user, but not everybody has to be a maker or a developer of AI. So I think if you can define what that workflow looks like, you can know at what level those skill sets need to be pushed through the organization to the front line. I think that's really important. And then you can control a lot with those groups. At what level they need to understand AI, you can control the training, you control the fear, you can give them the resources they need to make sure that they are able to kind of come up to speed. I don't think there's any greater compliment that an organization can do than to develop their people. So it is part of your culture. If you are investing in them to reskill and get these AI skills, that makes them relevant in the workforce. So I think that is a huge benefit. You can quantify that, just like we do in leadership development when you put them through leadership training, or you let them go do things that help them as a leader in a functional area. It's the same thing. You're investing in your people. And, I would quantify that, and it's actually a perk, and it's something great that organizations can do, because I think what we read in the news is everybody's laying people off, but what we see more is most people are reskilling their employees and learning how to figure out how to use the people in a better way. So then we go to kind of what questions leaders should be asking. So John, anything here that jumps out for you?
Yeah, I think understanding who, like your current teams, and understanding who do we currently have that could be a part of the early stage task force or committee to push these things forward, and getting a handle on that, and then just really understanding through the like having a solid understanding of how you currently get work done and the roles that make that up, and where AI will have the biggest influence and impact, is a really important question to be asking yourself. And are we, for those roles, do we then have the right tools and training and knowledge, guardrails, all of those factors in place to start to activate?
Yeah, and I really look at resistance and friction as really strong qualities in organizations, because when we go into organizations and we see zero resistance and there's zero friction, what it tells me is somebody at the top is making, is the king making the decisions, and everybody follows along, and you don't get the best of everybody. So I think conflict is good. I think you have to be able to handle conflict in a healthy way, but This is changing how people are doing their job, and they know what they know, and they're moving to an unknown. And so, it's no different from going from a columnar pad to now it's online in QuickBooks. How do I know? How do I make sure how do I double check the work? How do I make sure I know if I have a mistake to go find it? You just have to relearn. And so that resistance is real. And I really think if you kind of look around, if you assess your workforce at the front end, you would know this. It's also a way to look at, if you know that certain areas of your organization, I'll just stay with accounting and finance, if you know that's where you're going to have the biggest transition and transformation with AI, do you have the right leadership in place? Can that leadership actually lead that employee base through? And it depends. It really depends on the makeup of the teams, how strong are their skill sets, what's the curve that they have to make. And so, it's no different than getting somebody a coach to help them through a next phase. You can get an AI accelerator coach, a team that can come in and really help with that. But the resistance, that's where the biggest growth can come. But you got to be paying attention to that. And then I think measure. We talk about being able to measure is really, really key. Because what gets done gets measured, right? We always talk about that. And so you have to make sure you are pulsing and constantly going back and asking, is this working? Are we making progress? Are our dashboards, are we generating new dashboards so we're seeing not only the new workflows, but are we seeing the results in the way we're reporting out things as well?
Yeah. And I think that's where a great way to transition here to talk through the Workforce AI Readiness tool that we've built to help organizations get a really healthy heat map. We talked earlier about the roadmap, and you can't really plan your trip or plan a path. I like to visualize like a topographical map. If I'm planning a hike, I love fly fishing. So if I'm planning a hike to a spot to go do that, like I need to understand where I'm starting, where I'm going, and the terrain I'm going to encounter as I'm going to a spot to fish. I need to be able to see that and to visualize that to plan ahead. And that's what these maps really serve a strong to give you that starting point and to help you plan out what is this journey going to look like and where do we need to maybe apply extra training, extra resources and tools. And this is designed to give you that picture across your entire organization, from the executive leadership team, your management team, your employee staff, all geared properly to their part of the organization and the roles and the psychology associated with those roles that they're sitting in around how comfortable are they in interacting with AI? How are they using it today or not using it today? And then to produce these heat maps that then ultimately we use to produce your roadmap. And we start with the first 90 days. Okay, based on where you are today, what's the first 90 days? What's the first leg of that hike that you're going to go on? And if you can kind of talk a little bit about what is in that roadmap.
Yeah, it's a lot, but yeah, we could do that. The readiness, if you do culture surveys or 360 surveys, it's very similar. Like you're getting a pulse of, where the gap is, where you are exceed, because I think it's good to know where you're strong, where you're strong and build on your strengths. So those readiness maps are very similar to the concepts of whether you do culture. Culture, the way we measure culture is completely upside down. It's changed. The old culture surveys that we do are not going to be as relevant. You're going to have to reinvent kind of how you're measuring the culture. Again, and it's got to be evolving as your company's organization's evolving. The 90-day evolution roadmap, and again, the 90 days, I mean, I know John talks about, there is research around that's where a focus on how do you say it, John? It's like the best time frame you can focus as a company on one and on an initiative. If it's too long, it gets drawn out. Other things come up. If it's too short, there's too much pressure. So again, you can do a 90-day. We marry it to kind of how fast you're going, Again, you may need to go slow to go fast, but within that, we really start about it's a sequence plan and priority. We really position around that readiness, the skill gap. Where are you as a culture? If you have a culture that has really low trust at the top, people at the top, it's going to take a little more work on the front end. We build a vision and communication plan to help you as you're moving through that. That could be town halls. We may be building champions. We may be putting together AI acceleration teams throughout your organization. And then there's the practical skill building that you have to, the training piece, and those pathways, whether they're user, maker, developer, and then the governance. There is a big section on the governance, education, and what that looks like. We do future organization diagrams, visibility map, role impact analysis. Workflow design is really crucial. So going in and doing process mapping. What does it look like? Is it different? Are we just dropping in some automations that help, or are we going to re-architect an entire way we do something? We talked about the heat maps and culture. We like to pulse and measure all the way through. So there's adoption dashboards that we put into place. There's executive briefings. There's update the job descriptions. Once you get all that done, then when you start putting people in your job pipeline, those are different interview questions. Those are different job briefs. So they may even be a different place to find the skill sets that you need than what you've been doing. So really being able to do that. And then are the people interviewing for the jobs, are they really skilled at interviewing for jobs with these new skill sets? So you really have to kind of go all the way back. We kind of start in the middle where we're executing, and we're this is aligning to the strategy your business has. It's not a separate strategy. It's very much aligned. Creating the revenue usually comes down to revenue. Everybody I've worked with, it's always about revenue. Even the nonprofits, it's about the money they're bringing in. So, we really align to the business strategy, but making sure that there's a lot of pieces. So the roadmap, you have a first 90 days, which I think is critical, of how you get up and going, how you get people involved, how you calm the nerves, how you start building the skill sets. And if you're modeling the right thing, it's really empowering, and you will just start seeing the excitement and people come to life. And we very rarely have seen where it just like kills morale, and people really kind of get excited about what they're seeing. They're learning things. It's helping them in other areas of their life. So there's a lot within this, but those are some of the high points of what we do when we are kind of working within that roadmap. John, anything for you to add?
Yeah, I would just on the 90-day framework, I think it's important to understand that the roadmap can span way beyond that. But the reality of just planning and the cycles of change, especially because AI has expedited that, the further out you plan, the more vague and the more general it gets. I think of it like I like to think of it like driving in fog, right? The further out I look, the less I can see. But if I've got my lights on correctly and I'm looking right at the lines, it's easy for me to take the next right step. And so 90 days is around that period where you can get crystal clear on what are we going to focus on in the next 90 days so that we can take action in a really clear way because we can see that clearly. And that doesn't mean we don't plan beyond that. It just means we have to hold that a little bit looser, and it's a little bit more vague in bullet points, not details, beyond that 90-day, because things change, right? And you have to be able to pivot. So,
Yeah. I think too, the big thing is, once you have that roadmap and that you've aligned the strategy to the people and you're starting to reskill, you really have to have an accountability team. Maybe your L&D or training departments are going to be able to do that. But you really have to make sure that you have some accountability. It's like if you're going to have software development or you're putting in a new system, you don't just go, oh, I'm going to pick that system, and then you just think it's going to roll out. You have milestones and measurements, and you're constantly tracking. It's the same thing with the people side. I think it's very similar to that, is making sure, and you're asking people, there's this whole middle management squeeze where they're feeling the pressure from the top, of here's a new strategy, here's a new skill set you need. They're feeling pressure from their people and their teams of, I'm fearful, I don't know, I don't have the skill sets. And so the middle management leadership line has this squeeze that they feel, and that pressure is real. So, making sure that you're addressing that and making sure that they understand they have support at the top, and then they're also going to give support to their people so that it becomes part of your culture of innovating and being transformational in how that you're doing your work. Most people want to succeed and do really well. They just have to be given the right tools, the right training. And if you can allow for that, doesn't mean you don't augment teams, you don't bring people in that augment and help with the skill sets. You just mean that you're bringing kind of everybody up as well through that. So there's a lot in that, but it's really crucial. So kind of to close, really, it's not about replacing people with technology, and it's not about, the people build. It's the balance. It's really about the balance. The technology is going to just expand the capacity, and then the human leadership is what gives it direction. So the human piece is really, really important. So we talk a lot about getting the edge in the market. You need your people. But you have to understand that balance and give the direction. So, John, any kind of last wrap up from you?
Yeah, I would like to encourage everyone to, you know, don't let the anxiety or the FOMO or the pressure of I have to do something with AI, but I don't know where to start, prevent you from taking steps forward. We've given some great examples of some mental frameworks to think through, and then obviously we're here to help and provide guidance through all of these steps. Yeah, that's it's been really great to spend some time with everyone today.
Yeah, and I felt like this for a long time, but I really feel that culture and people are what make the organization successful. And so this is really about equipping your people to be successful. It's equipping your organization to even maybe expand, be able to do a lot more. And we all know what AI can do in a split second and the time it can change, but just the information that we can gain in such a short period of time and how that equips people. And if you had people throughout your organization that had the ability to, make certain automations or build certain agents or even sit in, we didn't really talk about use case harvesting, but that is part of what we do in our AI Navigator for this company strategy. But, you can have a lot of use cases. And I think that overwhelms organizations when they go through that. And then what we do is try to go back to that. Okay, let's assess before we activate. Let's really look at what aligns. What are the first things we should do? What is that first 90 days? Because you can get overwhelmed with that. But again, if you're equipping your people and giving them more capacity, that's what's going to give you the leverage in the marketplace. So it's an exciting time, I think, with culture and people. It's being redefined. The more that you kind of step in and really think about it, and you have to think about the people and the fatigue and a lot of the things that happen as we kind of introduce more technology, but it's an exciting thing. So, okay, so to wrap up, just a few things. If you want to continue this conversation, I'll share John and I's email. We're happy, just reach out to us in any way. We would love to continue the conversation. You may have specific questions to your organization. We would love to do that. This YouTube recording will be live, so you'll be able to see it. Most of you will probably get an email with it, but you can also go out to our YouTube channel if you want to share it or go back and re-listen to it. The next update number 5, will be September 10th. Scott Klosowski will be back with you, so I'm sure it'll be riveting. We will release that topic in July, so be looking out for that topic when it comes. That will be our next one in September. And then, as always, just other ways to connect with us. You can go on our website. There's a newsletter. There's things that we do. If you want to be part of our kind of brain trust and thought leadership piece, we'd love to have you as part of those subscriptions. And then we do think tanks. So this year, We will have a think tank in early November in Oklahoma City, so we'll have more if you would like to be considered and fill out an application to attend. We'd love for you to do that. We will also be going to Florida and hosting one December 7th and 8th. So we would love to see you either in Florida and Oklahoma City. It's the same think tank, so either location you get the same content. We limit that to 45 people. So if that's something that you would be interested in, those are usually very thought-forward leaning topics. So last year, if you attended or saw, we did a lot on AI and leadership. And then there was a book that was actually written that FPOB and one of our consultants, Dan Shewart, was a part of. So we can share that book if you're interested in it. You just reach out and email. We're happy to do that. So I think at this time we will consider it wrapped up, and we look forward to connecting soon in the future. Have a great rest of your week.